So I would like to call the 2022 AESD Annual Membership Business Meeting to order. This year we have three big items to take action on. The first is a proposed AESD constitutional revisions, which you've heard about. Our constitution had not been updated since 2016. And with President Zurloff's resignation, we realized there were things that came to light that we really needed to attend to quickly. Number two is the AESD Executive Board Officers nominees. And every even numbered year, the Executive Board's nominating committee presents a slate of officers for membership to vote on. And finally, the proposed 2022-23 AESD network budget. So an overview with links to all of pre-reading materials for every one of these three items have been sent through your executive board members and superintendents for the past month. So hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at them and prior to today. However, if you have not, we're going to provide a brief overview on each one of them for you. So I'd like to first off invite my colleague and fellow executive board member, Terry Brandon, to provide an overview of the proposed constitutional changes. Terry?
Thank you, Marcia. Jessica, can you give me a thumbs out if you're hearing me? Okay, I've been uncharacteristically quiet during this meeting, so I wasn't sure. So as Marcia mentioned before, we kind of came up with a bit of a constitutional crisis when we had the resignation of John, because we really didn't have anybody in line. The Constitution that is currently in place would call for the President Emeritus to take the position, and really wasn't anyone for that. So we started looking at the Constitution. And then in the design meetings, we also realized that there were some things that needed to be changed. So as we went through the Constitution, we found a significant number of things that needed to be changed that were just not current practice, and they certainly may not align with what the redesign was saying. We ended up kind of whittling that down into a couple of phases, and so I'll be talking about the first phase, and then there'll probably be some additional things at the next meeting. You should have received at some point three pretty significant documents, and one of them is the current Constitution, and that's from 2016. And then there was should be a summary that just says AESD Constitution proposed revisions. And then there also should have been a detailed Constitution with red line and strikeout and so that has everything in it. So just as way of an overview, what we're asking at this meeting for the membership to approve is basically general cleanup. Some additional clarity, some minor administrative updates. We have grammar and consistency, acronyms, so forth, bullets and renumbering when things just didn't quite match. There's also some work on an ADA accessibility check that affects fonts and so forth. And changing executive secretary, that term away, and also changing treasurer to fiscal agent. Which is what we use. So that's one part of it. We also, as we developed these changes, it became apparent that there were things in the Constitution that changed on a somewhat regular basis that really didn't need to be in the Constitution. Things like the mission, vision, the statewide map, what were the contact numbers and so forth. And what we are recommending is that we have several pages within this Constitution that are subject to change. They're really not part of the Constitution, but they'll be packaged with the Constitution, just so we can have it all in one place. We also need to look at the purpose of AESD, and there's some thoughts in there about that. And then the biggest one that we ran into was the update officer roles. And so specifically what we're recommending is that we remove the term president emeritus as an officer of the board. And we remove the election selection process and codify it as a specific membership. So that would mean that that person would come on basically after they had been a president, and it would be the most recent president. We also, just because of the way this operates, we're recommending that we change the term vice president to president-elect. And that would go throughout the whole membership. And that we also revise the line of succession if in case there's a vacancy in president or vice president, so that we won't run into an issue like we did before. There are also some outdated references and duties. And let's see the next page. And there were some outdated references in the financial section. So we're just looking more for clarity in those things. So we had a nice little team, and Marcia was on it. Darcy Weisner was on it from ESD 123 superintendent. I was on it, and Jessica, who actually carried most of the work and made sure that whatever we wrote up in a meeting actually came to fruition for the next meeting. So Jessica, anything you want to add into that?
I don't think so. Would love to open it up to questions or clarifications on this piece. When we get to the voting portion of the meeting, the proposal is to vote as a block in terms of these updates. So really, this is your chance to ask any clarifying questions. Hopefully you and your boards have had a chance to look at these prior to now. But yeah, would open it up to anything in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself to ask.
Any questions? Or we want to go to the next one, Jessica, or do you want to wait a few more minutes?
I think we can always come back. We'll have time at the end of each portion and before we go to the vote if you have questions.
All right, thanks. Well, then I'm going to move on. I'd like to now turn it over to my colleague and past AESD president, Merle Kirkley, and he's going to share the nominating committee's report of the AESD officer nominees. Merle?
Thanks, Marcia, very much. I appreciate it. And it's really been a privilege for me to chair the nominating committee this year, and along with James Seabury and Marcia. And as you can see, that Article 7 of the AESD Constitution really outlines a process for selecting AESD executive board members. And the slide up, the slide that's here now really kind of gives you a little bit of a little look at how we did it and how it was done. And because of the proposed change to the Constitution officer's role, we've not brought forward a past emeritus president, which Terry went through very well there. Jessica is going to put a link on to the full nominating committee report, provides more information about Marcia and Terry. All right, I just want to talk a little bit about our rationale in nominating the two of them. First of all, Marcia, as the president-elect, I will tell you that she was, I remember when we first talked to her about jumping into the position of taking over, of being the president when John had to leave us. She was a little nervous and wasn't sure exactly. She said, no, I can't. I don't know if I can do this and run the meetings. Well, you know what? She has done an absolutely superb job. I can't tell her thank you enough for all, I think, the good work that she's done. And she will make an absolutely wonderful president of our network for the next year. And then Terry, of course, his work just not only through schools through all the years that I've known him, but his work on this Constitution and revision of the network I thought was just really fantastic. So him as vice president, we're just in good hands with our executive staff and officers for the next few years. But also as part of our constitution, we'd like to open up nominations to all of you as AESD board members. So if you would like to consider anybody else, please submit them privately in the next few minutes to Jessica via chat. Thanks very much. And now back to you, Marcia.
And Marcia, I'll just clarify, we're not on the slide. It says do it during the lunch break. If you could just do it privately via chat now, because we already had lunch.
That's true.
Thank you, Merle, and thank you for being such a good mentor to me. Okay, now finally, I'm going to turn it over to Tim to provide a brief overview of the proposed 2022-23 AESD network budget.
Yeah, thanks, Marcia. So during the annual ESD membership business meeting, which is today, AESD members are responsible for adopting the upcoming year's AESD budget at the recommendation of the AESD Executive Board. So during the meeting on March 4th, 2022, the Executive Board considered the proposed 22-23 budget and approved it to move forward to AESD membership for adoption. Next slide, Jessica, please. So the proposed 22-23 AESD network budget takes some steps in response to the feedback and recommendations that came forward in the redesign process. We're maintaining flat rates assessments for all the ESDs while using some of the reserves that we developed due to offerings over the pandemic through the network. The expenditure increase is going to fund additional support staffing for the executive director, as well as additional communication supports for the network. In addition to the ESD contributions with SIPC, accreditation, and construction services groups, we'll continue to make contributions as statewide ESD programs. And this slide provides an overview of key components for the proposed budget and a snapshot of the overall budget proposal. I know this is a quick high-level overview, and since after you'll be voting on these items in a little bit, I'd like to open it up for any questions or comments people have on the budget, either verbally or in chat. Marsha, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thanks. Well, now we're ready to take some action. And
Hey, Marsha, I guess they did want to go back one slide. I guess that slide, right? So Sue, go ahead.
I just wanted to have another moment to look at it.
Oh, you bet. You bet. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine.
So Marsha, I'll turn it back to you when you're ready.
okay, I'm ready. I'm going to have Jessica take us through the Zoom voting process for each of the 3 items we need to vote on. So just vote on. So Jessica, can you take us through?
Absolutely. Okay. So just before we get into that, Article 10 of your Constitution speaks to the quorum that is required for your association meetings, your membership meetings when it comes to voting. And that quorum is 25% of the full membership. So your full membership is around 69 members, ESD board members, and 25% of that would be 18. So we are glad to say we're well over that quorum requirement for the voting that will take place in the next few minutes. So we'll start out with the proposed Constitution revisions, and also we're virtual, so we'll be doing it a little bit differently with the polls through Zoom. And so we won't need necessarily a second or anything. I'll pose the question to you via the Zoom poll, and then on your computer, screen or with your device, board members only, you will vote. And we understand that a few of your rooms, you may just, like at North Central, you guys may have one computer. I'm not sure if you'll all be able to vote individually, but we'll quantify that as well. So the first question is, do you support making the revisions as presented during this meeting and in the pre-reading materials to AESD membership, to the AESD Constitution? So I'm going to launch the poll, and this is your vote. I'm going to relaunch the poll. Hold on a second, relaunch poll.
It's gonna be hard
We're
to
all
vote.
learning. No,
Not everybody can vote.
hold on. Everybody, yeah, so you're gonna, so this is, what is it called when you, this is honor system. Staff don't vote, superintendents don't vote.
Came up on my screen. Do you support the Constitution change?
You have to show your
Did
voter
it.
ID.
I'm voting. I'll tell Jessica.
And Marcia, can you vote?
I don't think I can vote on this, can I, Pete?
It's all, there is no provision about executive board members that I'm aware of. So you are in the count, executive board members.
I can say we should be for, I know that.
And Sarah, you're gonna help me watch. Okay, thank you, Michelle. Sarah, you're gonna watch the count with me. We should be close to 30 voting. We'll give it a couple more moments. And I do see some questions coming up in the chat regarding the budget. Before we go to the vote on the budget, we'll be sure to open that up for a bit more dialogue, knowing some of you didn't have a chance to ask before. I'm gonna give it just a few more seconds. Anybody else need to vote on this one? Constitution changes. Gonna close it here in a moment. Okay, I'm closing it. And I'm going to share the results. So all of you should see on your screen unanimous support. You see it on the screen, hopefully. Thank you. Unanimous support of the Constitution changes. Okay. The next item, I feel like my brain is, okay. The next item are the officers, and I will launch. So, and I did not receive, let me just double check. I did not receive any nominations from the chat or from the floor. Speak now, or this is your ballot. Okay, I'm going to launch. First, we're going to do first for president. And you'll see two bubbles there, but really it's just the Marcia Henkel one. I think that'll be pretty easy. Okay, we're at the same number, so congratulations, Marcia, you're in. Yahoo! Okay, we're gonna do vice president next. Okay. And there we have, congratulations, Terry. Okay, and then the final vote. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't change the screen. There you go. Okay, I'll open it up to Tim. I assume you saw the chat and wanted to know if you have additional comments based on the chat before we move to the vote.
Yeah, I'm looking through here and
So one of the questions is regarding the proposed increase in expenses. Is that sustainable without increasing future dues or contributions from the ESDs?
Well, it all depends. I mean, right now we've got, Jessica has been able to bring in, and the ESDs have been able to bring in some other funding sources, like some new grants that we get that we charge off some of the time for people to. So that's kind of what we're looking at too. But, you know, in 2 years from now, that's true. We'd have to increase fees. We didn't increase fees this year. 2 years ago, our fees were higher. We actually reduced them. But we did bring in a lot of money in through the network this last year, $23 million. And realistically, I would think some of that additional indirect, what should have gone into supporting the network, it didn't. We just froze our fees and used fund balance instead.
So Tim, there's another question here regarding, and I think it has to do with the sustainability question as well, is a little bit more background on the contribution from WSIPC. And Dana's happy to jump into, but I think you have some thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, these are just my thoughts, but WSIPC is an ESD statewide program. And we have other programs like accreditation, and our own construction services program are contributing as statewide programs run by one ESD, or in the case of WSIPC, the group of ESDs. And the $100,000, and Dana, maybe you can mention this, but I think the idea would be to get that as part of a permanent piece of the WSIPC budget going forward at some point.
Yes, that's correct, Tim. I don't know exactly, want to make sure we respond to the question appropriately, but WSIPC's contribution is under the direction of the board to our executive director, and one of our future budgeting considerations is to build that into future budget. It's been spend down from a budget line item that was sustained or set aside well over a decade ago, and so has not had a direct fiscal impact on WSIPC. As Tim mentioned, WSIPC is the single largest shared enterprise of the ESDs, about $30 million budget. And in lieu of time and effort tracking of the ESD's participation in governance and other activities directly associated with our leadership roles in WSIPC, and also in consideration of their network component of the support of the 9, we have agreed as a system that their contribution to AESD would be set at that level.
And there was just a comment in the chat, Tim, regarding, I'm trying to find it. The
amount of fees?
Yes, thank you. You saw it.
Well, yeah, like I said, the assessment that we've charged did not go up from year to year. And as a matter of fact, it's less than it was 2 years ago. And I get it, you know, I believe it's around 300 and some thousand between the 9 ESDs, but
okay, so any additional comments or questions before I open the question before you, before I call the question? Okay, so the question here is whether or not you support the adoption of the proposed budget as presented today.
It's a relatively small money when you look at what goes into that.
I think we have a few remaining folks to vote. I'll give it a few more seconds. Okay, here you go. And I will share the results. It looks like It passed with full support.
Great.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, and I'll hand it over back to Marcia.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. That was an important process, and I'm so glad we got those votes finished. And thank you from Terry and I for your support for us. We're happy to serve, and we'll try, in my friend Larry's words, keep this thing heading west. So thank you, everyone. So we're on the downhill slide now. We've got just a whole bunch of fun things left